on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the DingoTalk Alumni Tour. My guest this week, he's kind of like Harry Chambers, needs no introduction whatsoever. If you've ever been to Bethany, you've met this man. It's Kenn Morgan, class of 1971. We're going to talk about a lot of things. It's Kenn, so anybody that's watched Kenn knows. He's going to tell you in depth a lot of stories. And, you know, we'll take a break and then we'll come back and he'll tell more stories and then we'll send it to Harry. There's some guests in the audience today, so, you know, Kenn has a little bit of an audience for himself, which makes it better. But without further ado, Kenny Morgan. What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino, and this week, a special guest, part of Mount Rushmore of Bethany, I think. Kenn Morgan, class of 1971. Kenn, first.
Did your homework?
There's your tea. Welcome to the show.
Oh, I get it. Thank you.
So, we're going to do what we do every week. We're going to start with how you found Bethany, way back when. Talk about your time as a student. You left for a little bit, came back, and I think the story, then, well, I'll let you tell the rest of the story.
Okay. I'm prepared. I know it.
Why Bethany? What was the attraction?
All right. Well, it was just certain my whole life that I would go to college, even though neither of my parents did. My parents were both from gigantic families. My mother, one of 11, my father, one of 7. And my mother from a wealthy family, and my father from the other side of the track, poor family. So there was no chance that he would go to college. And in those days, you know, what we're talking about, I was born in 49, they were married in 47. It was a real big deal for a woman to go on to college, even if they were from an affluent family. So anyway, but it was, you know, I was always in the college group as I went through school, and I never questioned that I wouldn't go to college, but what college? So my dream college was William and Mary, and because we lived close to Williamsburg, we would spend many weekend Sundays going there and walking the campus, and that was just where I thought I was going to go. And do you guys in this room know what Boys State is all about? Boys State is something that I think it still continues. Guys are, and women for Girls State, but guys are selected based on a number of things and selected to go to a boys' state. I was one of the lucky guys to go to boys' state, and it was held at William and Mary, my dream college. And so I'm there in one of the dorms and having a wonderful time, I thought. And it's about government. So it's all about civics. So you learn about how Congress works and so on. And one of the things that I ascribed to was to be a part of the newspaper. And I did a cartoon. It's like a 3-week thing, as I recall. I think 3. And I did a cartoon for the newspaper and did some other stuff. And I was just having a great time. Anyway, for the second, they invited me back for the second year, which is kind of unusual, to be in charge of the Boys State newspaper. And here I am again at this amazing place where I want to go to college. And I'm thinking that's what it's going to be. That's where it's going to be. And while I was there, a tragic thing happened. And it swirled my world around, and I thought, oh wow. I mean, it involved somebody having a serious accident and not being discovered. And his body was close to the room that I was staying. Anyway, I was shattered. Like, I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
So now I've got to go back. There was a thing called Peterson's Guide. I understand they're still making them, you know, electronically, where you look all these colleges up. And I'd only gotten through the A's, and I got to the B's, and there was this Bethany College, and I read this description. Among the hills of the Allegheny Mountains is this, and I'm thinking, like, whoa, this sounds kind of nice. And so I read it to my parents, and they said, well, Kenny, that's really kind of far away, and it's in West Virginia. And I said, well, can we just at least go see it? And so they said, well, sure. North Carolina Wesleyan was my second choice. And that, of course, made a lot more sense because it was new, it was close, it was all these things. And yet the word that turned me off was new. And so we got in the car ultimately and we drove up here, and it took like 12 hours in those days.
It feels like 12
a
hours.
long time. It depends on a lot of situations. And we got here and very tired. And we stayed in Wheeling the night before. Howard Johnson's no longer there. And then came up the rest of the way. When we got to West Liberty, I thought that's where it was. Because, it's there first. And I thought, this looks like North Carolina Wesleyan. Sorry. Anyway, and it does, doesn't it? I mean, they're the same. And luckily it wasn't. And so we take the extra 4 miles and we get here. And as soon as I saw the Ogilvy Gates and Old Main and whatever, I felt like I was in love at first sight with this place. And with that, as much as my parents tried to dissuade me, thinking like, it's really far away, Kenny, I decided that this is where I want to apply. This is where I want to go.
I gotta pause you there. I really like this Kenny thing. Can I call you Kenny now?
Yes.
I like
it's
that.
very special.
I like that.
I do give permission, and sometimes I ask permission. My wife refuses. She must have had a bad thing with the Kenny somewhere along the way. But Judy will not say Kenny, call me Kenny. But I basically know Kenny about people that I have either given permission to, and that includes you, or people that knew me all the way. Well, actually, people that knew me in elementary school call me Kenneth Lee, because after all, I'm from the south of the Mason-Dixon line, and you don't just have one name. So I was Kenneth Lee for quite a while, and then I became Kenny. And then when I turned 40, I made a big deal about thinking I was probably too old and mature to be Kenny. So I dropped the Y, and that's why I'm Kenn with 2 N's. I just dropped the Y.
Well, I have to tell you, I knew that you were Kenn with 2 N's, and when I originally had talked to you about being on the show, I put you in the schedule, and I wrote it quickly, and I went and was trying to build out the rest of the schedule. I had multiple messages. You should change that. It's Kenn with 2 N's. It's not Kenn with 1 N. Don't let him see that.
All right.
So
well, I think on that. Cheers.
So you're here now. You've come to Bethany.
I am here now.
And you, as a student, you end up in Greek life. You end up very involved on
campus.
campus.
Let me tell you a couple of stories about this. Now, I don't want this to go on forever. But, okay, so I choose Bethany, and my parents bring me here, and it was a whole big deal. I'm an only child. I should make that real clear. I'm an only child, so this is like huge. And so I lived in Campbell Hall. My room was in Campbell Hall. I got notice that I had room 222 in Campbell Hall. And so my parents, I got a big trunk out and all the stuff that I needed and whatever, and to move into my room. And I was just kind of overwhelmed because I didn't have any real expectations about all this. So when I got to my room was obviously already occupied, although my roommate wasn't there, but it was like jockland. I mean, there wasn't a single piece of athletic equipment that wasn't already in this room, on both beds, I might add. So where am I supposed to sleep was my question. And who's my roommate? Well, of course, in those days, same as now, the jocks came back a couple weeks earlier to practice and whatever. No exception that year. And so my roommate was from Canonsburg. His name was Dan Miller. I hadn't met him yet. I'd gotten his name and such and whatever, and where he's from. And what I learned very quickly on after they did their practice is that my room had become 222 Party Central in Campbell Hall. But that being said, I didn't have a space in there. It wasn't my room. It was their room and Dan's room. And if that's not enough, he looked like he was made by Michelangelo. He was tall, blonde, blue-eyed, and perfect. Chiseled and perfect, and all that, and had tons of friends who decided that I needed to stay over in this little corner of the room. And that was really challenging, to say the least, because I had thought, well, I'll make a few friends and find some other people. And so anyway, I was really challenged by that. Now, I'll tell you just one quick story, because I am the result of being bullied, like a lot of times through school from the time I began. And certainly when I got to Bethany College, when I thought that would be over. Yeah. Because in high school, I finally had been celebrated. I had the lead in the senior class play. I was happy to be whoever I was and could be whoever I was. And I thought, well, I went to Woodrow Wilson. I hate saying those names that day. We weren't taught what a racist he was in high school. But anyway, I went to Wilson High School, 2,000 students. I thought I'm coming to Bethany with half that. So, it's going to be way fun, way better, way whatever. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. At least it wasn't the case for me then. So I was challenged. Well, Dan had a velvet, not unlike this, but it was blue velvet lounge chair between the two beds that was from his family. I think he told me I'm pretty sure it was his grandmother. And I wasn't allowed to sit in it. So it would not occur to me to sit in it. But luckily, Dan had a girlfriend in Canonsburg. So every weekend, Dan would go home to see his girlfriend. And I thought, I got the chair. And so, who's ever going to know? Except there was this one weekend when he had forgotten something in the room.
And came back
and saw Kenny sitting in his chair. And let me tell you, he whipped me out of that chair and threw me up against the wall and dared me to ever sit in that chair again.
Did you ever sit in the chair again?
I think a couple of times. But not all the time. And not while he was in the room. I had a brain. So ultimately, here's what I have to say. There was something that I was able to overcome during that. And actually, when these guys would come to the room, which they frequently did, again, it was Party Central, that I became a larger participant in this situation. They started to, Dan was one of the later ones, they started to say, there's something kind of funny about this guy, kind of like worth listening to or having something going on there. And by the way, I'll have to say that I am good friends with some of these guys still to this day. Dan Miller, I don't know where he's gone. I've not been able to find him and nobody else that I know. He, by the way, was pre-med. I was pre-dental. How about that idea? And so he transferred after our first year to Cornell and ultimately disappeared. And no one that I've been friends with has any idea where he is, even though he's only from Canonsburg. But maybe I'm going on too long, so you tell me.
So you're here. You get here. Past freshman year and everything.
Well, so you said Greek life. Let me tell you about this. Okay, so Dan and Pat Morrow and Jim Duff and Jeff Mott and I'm getting cheek chills because I'm remembering all their names and their faces, and they're all pledging Sigma Nu. Well, and telling me that's what I should do. But I'm like, but guys, I'm not like the Sigma Nus. Well, because they all were more stereotypical in those days, and Greek life was a whole big deal. So I said, I don't think that's right for me. And I went to all the rush parties, and there were a couple that I knew wouldn't be right for me. And one was Beta, and one was Sigma Nu. And the others, I'm like, ambivalent about and whatever. But I was kind of convinced by a couple of guys that Delta Tau Delta was the place for me to go. Delta Tau Delta in those days was the fraternity for dorks and the fraternity for really smart people and the fraternity that, was really not who I was, but was more who I was than Sigma Nu and Beta. And I was never interested in Phi Tau. And KA had a Confederate flag, so that was not going to work.
I can't imagine.
I'm
just shocked that you the similarities that we have in our time.
I've never been a racist.
Not the KA thing. I'm not surprised by the Phi Tau thing at all. It's just not a fit for you. Even for when you meet some of the guys that were in the house back when you were in school compared to the guys that were in the house when I was in school, and now it's just...
They're the same people.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is probably going to get me in big trouble, isn't it? I don't know who watches this. I'm not going to care, right? No. It doesn't matter to me. I'm 71 years old.
Yeah. You've earned the right.
I am only me, sitting right here. So I put in a bid for Delta Tau Delta, even though my new friends were saying, oh, don't do that. Put in a bid for Sigma Nu. And I'm like, you guys, thanks, but these other guys, they don't know me. They'll probably blackball me. Because in those days, black balls weren't just what you two have. They were like serious consequences for trying to join a group. And so that was that. Now, okay, so bid day comes along, and it's in Cochran Hall, and the women are there. We called them girls then, and the men were there. And so they go in the right door, the women, to get their bids, and the men go in the left door. And they're going through, you know, you tell them your name, and it was John Cunningham, and I'm trying to think of other people that might have been there that day. And so they're handing out envelopes. And so just a few of the envelopes were a different color than the others. And so I got mine, and mine was not the same color as the guys that I'd walked over with that had gone for Sigma Nu. And so I'm walking over and I'm opening the envelope, and the envelope tells me that I have not been accepted by any fraternity on campus. And therefore, but there was no warning in those days. And so two friends of mine, luckily in Campbell Hall, one very close friend of mine, and I were blackballed from Delta Tau Delta. Now imagine this. I have just been blackballed by a group that my best friends, if we're going to call them that, have already said they're a bunch of dorks.
Good word.
I know.
Good word. It was a good save there. I like it. Hey, I like it. Hey, we're tiptoeing.
All right. And so, therefore, that was devastating. Can you even imagine being like not accepted by a group like that? That I'd never kind of experienced that sort of thing, or if I had, I'd blocked it out. Anyway, but here's how life, if you let it, figures out what needs to happen. So I was devastated. I cried a lot. I was alone a lot, and the first, I wanted to get out of here as fast as possible. I can't tell you how many nights I spent on the phone with my parents across the hall, because I wasn't allowed to use the phone in our room because Danny was in charge of the phone.
Danny seemed to be in charge of a lot of things.
And yeah, I mean, you know, I had to ask permission. But across the hall was a deaf student who had a special phone, and I would go over there to Richie's room, and I had two deaf students, student friends, and as a matter of fact, I'd go over there and I'd use his phone to call my parents and beg them to let me come home. And my mother would say, and my father she was much more verbal than my father. Kenny, we paid tuition for the whole year,
you're
staying there, and just figure it out and talk to who's that in charge of your dorm, because we had dorm masters. Talk to him and tell him what you're going through, and you're going to have to stay there.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop you. We'll take a break. We'll come back right from there, and we'll move more into what Bethany was like back when you were here when you were here as a student, and now what it's like.
When Alexander Campbell and I were going.
Well, hey, you know, I played cards with Alexander Campbell once. It was the Bubbas, but you know that's a whole nother story.
I guess, I'm sure.
But I do have to send it to our sponsor, KJ Kieran Dunn, with Maple Shades Outdoors. If you haven't yet, follow him on Instagram, subscribe to him on YouTube. That's a great group of guys over there. They're putting a lot of stuff out, and who knows, maybe merchandise will be coming soon. I know that there's some whispers. I have a hat, so reach out to KJ, try to get him to sell hats. But go ahead, KJ, take it.
What's going on, everybody? This is Kieran Dunn, founder of Maple Shade Outdoors. You're currently watching Dingo Talk with my man Carlo. If you're anything like me and you're really enjoying this content, you should like and subscribe his page. While you're on YouTube, you should probably just head over and like and subscribe Maple Shade Outdoors. Check out our page, enjoy some videos, some outdoor content. You might as well hop on Instagram, Facebook, follow us, Maple Shade Outdoors. Now that's enough about me. I'm trying to get back and watch the rest of Dingo Talk, so I'll talk to y'all later.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. As I pointed out in part one, part of the Mount Rushmore of Bethany here. Kenn Morgan, class of 71. For most of us, art, intro to painting, or painting one.
Drawing.
I didn't take drawing with you. I had painting one, and I had art fundamentals. I struggled in art fundamentals, did really well in painting one. I think you were generous, but I still have my painting though.
I try to be. Yeah.
But in part one, we talked about how Kenn got here and some of the struggles that he had when he got to Bethany with his roommate, who apparently was in charge of everything.
In our room.
So, and we left off. Kenn had just found out that he was not going to be a Delt or Greek at that point, and actually wanted to go home. Which I think a lot of people would be shocked to find out that Kenn Morgan wanted to leave Bethany. I mean,
isn't that amazing? Okay, so I begged and pleaded with my parents. I've got to come home. I hate it here. I've got to come home. You got to get me out of here. We paid the tuition, full tuition. You're going to have to stay. Full tuition, under $3,000. Let me throw that out there. In any event, that was a lot of money. So, oh God, I'll stay. And I was a biology major. I was going to be a dentist. I was miserable. I had 8 o'clock classes 5 days a week. This place was just wrong. But what I really loved was art. But I didn't get any art classes, but I had all these other classes. French, I got tested in French too. I shouldn't have. I got this other math class. Anyway, so my schedule just didn't sing to me.
And that's something that if you have a freshman that comes to you with these similar, my classes are just not, these are stories that you can share with them where they're able to go, oh wow, Kenn went through that, or just somebody that's been through it, through the system that's here.
Well, I think that's one of my gifts. I mean, I got them the hard way, but I think that's the way I've gotten most things, and I think that's what I have to give, is having had these conflicts with who I probably should be becoming, but who I thought I was supposed to be. Anyhow, so I got through that semester, having been blackballed from a fraternity, and having very few friends that I thought were, really my kind of people, except for a couple. Now, some guys at the same time were getting together and they were called Phi Alpha, and they were a local fraternity at that point in time. And they came to visit me, and in my room, I guess Daniel must have been home with this girl. I don't know when
you were allowed to have
how'd that happen? Can I have guests, Dan? Okay, thanks.
I'm not going to be here this weekend. I don't care.
Anyway, so they came in and sat down on the two beds and said, we're starting a fraternity and we want you to be a part of that. We think you're just the kind of person. And I'm saying, well, what kind of guys, what are we looking at? Diversity is the number one thing we want to have. And I said, I like diversity. What kind of diversity are we talking about? Well, we've got swimmers, we've got a football player, they went through the whole litany of all different, we got smart guys that don't even play anything and whatever. And, but we hear something about you that we don't have. And I said, what is that? An artist. We could use an artist. I'm thinking like, well, okay. Well, and I started thinking about it. So the next thing I know, they gave me a bid, and my other two friends that had also been blackballed and I were invited to become part of that. So we did. And so I'm one of 29 founders of Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity, one of the best national fraternities in the country at the time.
Wait a minute, time out now. So we've established that neither one of us were going to be Phi Taus. You're getting into a point of a house that I lived in, that you lived in. And to ball all that together, I'm part of the group that restarted Alpha Sig, the 14 of us that end up in your house. The connections at Bethany are just, I mean, we didn't have 29, let's be real. It took them a very long time to get to a point. Alpha Sigma Phi, also a very well-to-do, I guess, in the fraternity world.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. In the fraternity world and in the history of Bethany College. That's what you guys had. And for whatever reason, Alpha Sigs weren't interested in me, and I wasn't interested in them somehow. I loved their beautiful house. Oh my gosh.
Point Breeze, and that's at the peak of
yeah.
Point Breeze.
Yeah, exactly. So why that didn't catch on with me, I don't know. But
so you guys are founding SAE.
So we founded SAE. We did all the things that nationals have to do, which is kind of challenging. And we went national, and then in my junior year, and this part really, I'm not going to shed a tear tonight. I promise myself that. But in my junior year of being a part of Sigma Alpha Epsilon, I was elected in an archon, which is the president of Sigma Alpha Epsilon. So I went from being this guy that nobody wanted, or that I felt totally unwanted, to be the president of a fraternity that had a lot of prestige at that point in time. Now, prestige doesn't matter so much. Because you can get too carried away with it, which unfortunately is the other side of the story. Before I could come back here, and I hate this fact, in 1984, the SAEs got so ridiculous that they were tossed off campus by nationals and the administration.
And there's a campus rumor, I believe I've brought it to you many times, the steps by the library. I heard there was some fireworks and whatnot, and the steps are, if you've ever been to the back steps, you know which one's right in between Moreland and the library. They look goofy.
I only know what I know, and that is that most of those stories are probably folklore, like the cow being taken up into the tower,
yes,
and the steps being blown up, and a gangbang up in SAE with administrator's wife,
yes,
and stuff like that. That just, all that is baloney as far as I'm concerned. I don't think any of it is true. But what I can tell you is, I saw this coming. I've never missed a homecoming. I graduated in 71. I came here in 67. I've never missed a homecoming. And one of those annual things was going to the SAE house after the football game or whatever. And in must have been homecoming 83 or 84. I went there after whatever with a couple of my little brothers. I ended up having 5 little brothers, all by the way, which says something about either longevity or being nice, I guess, or being crazy. I don't know.
One of them.
One of those. One of them was Gene Valentine.
Oh.
Can I just put that out there for public? Gene, my little brother.
Yeah.
Gone. Okay, so where the hell was I? Okay.
You were gonna go, but you saw it coming.
So we go up there, and what they had done was they had thrown full beer cans at the composites. Now, how stupid is that to waste beer? But they had thrown full beer cans at the composites, and there was glass all over the floor, and I couldn't believe it. And by the way, our goddess, our symbol and whatever was Minerva, goddess Minerva. And so I remember so well that we would, when we had installations and initiations and whatever, we would wrap Minerva in a blanket. I guess bubble wrap hadn't been invented then, I don't know. We'd wrap her in a blanket and take her to these places. And I remember one time, I'm in the front seat, passenger seat, and I got Minerva in between my legs, so don't think about that. But she was all wrapped up in blankets. And so we're on our way to Steubenville to this place where we had the initiation and the whole celebration, whatever. We went from that to that night. I'm looking I said, we got to get out of here, because I thought it was getting out of hand. And these people didn't care or seem to care who we were, old essays or whatever. So we're leaving, and here's Minerva's body standing there by the exit door of Goodnight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Middle house.
Yeah.
Middle
we
house.
went from Goodnight to the Middle House, because we never lived in the Middle House when I was here. And here's Minerva standing there, but her head's gone, and there's a rusty pipe sticking out of her head.
That's now Minerva's head.
I don't know where her head is. No, her head is now a pipe.
Oh, okay.
Rope.
Yeah.
What do you call that stuff? Rebar. What?
Yeah, rebar.
Rebar.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. So I think maybe a good segue right here would be, there's a lot of misinformation out there about how the SAEs went down and whatever. And it hurts my heart, because we had worked really hard to make something very special. And they still had maintained their diversity. I believe that. But for whatever reason, and I think the key is this, and I'm hoping that I'm not going to offend anyone who might listen to this, but the key to fraternity success, in my opinion, in a place like Bethany in particular, is an advisor that is going to make sure that you're going to do the right stuff and get the right stuff done and care about the right things. And therefore, I would have been very happy
To be that.
guy. And it just was so sad that these guys have gone away. I had nothing to do with it now before I got back here. And then Tom Stein.
Well, and you kind of come full circle in this, as you weren't going to be involved in Greek life. You then become the president of your chapter, and you come back in 84, 87.
No, I came back in 89.
Come back in 89, and soon thereafter become a Greek advisor.
A Greek advisor, because my house was no longer here. And so Tom Stein, a friend of mine who was the admission director and a great, great guy, I wish someday he'd be president of Bethany College. He'd be great. He wanted to be, but didn't get the final job. In any event, Tom Stein came to me and said, Ken, I'm leaving Bethany, and he was Sigma Nu advisor, and I really think you'd be a great advisor for Sigma Nu. I'm going, Tom Stein, let me just say this, because I hadn't been here very long. I said, well, I don't know those guys yet, but wouldn't that be like the craziest thing? These are the very same people that wouldn't have had me join them when I was a freshman many moons ago. And I said, well, I'll think about it. So I went to a chapter meeting, and I want to tell you this, and if I can get through this next few minutes without crying, those 14 to 15 years of my involvement with Sigma Nu fraternity were the best 14 or 15 years of my life at Bethany College. I love those guys. They love me. If you look at our Christmas card stack, if you look at the baby pictures, if you look at all that, those guys, and the fact that now their house is closed is. But
it's those guys and grouping from the early '90s into that early 2000s that are the ones that kind of like Alpha Sig went through it. We've had other chapters that KA's still up in the air. Are they going to come back? They shouldn't come back. Truthfully, I mean, I've said that from talking to you, talking to Bill Kiefer, other people. It's just not the right fit for this campus, and frankly, with their beliefs and such like that.
They'd have to make a major shift in sensitivity.
But Delta's also going through some things. It's a Greek life thing. It's under attack, but there's a thing to be said about what Bethany Greeks are. We're not that big, Animal House, party school, go to Ohio State, go to Penn State. We're not those Greeks. We are just as much involved in the community, both the town and the college, as the athletes are, because a lot of that is a crossover. I mean, Bethany has really become, and it sounds like when you were there, it was a predominantly athletic. You had athletes and you had non-athletes, but the athletes outweighed.
I think, it's my perception, I would think that there was an equal emphasis upon academics and athletics at that point in time.
And now, not now, but even in the last 20 years.
If it seemed otherwise, it's because that in terms of athletics, we won everything. In terms of the conference, we were the school, the college. And keep in mind that I was here when there were more students than we'd ever had before, and that I hope I'm wrong in this, that we'll ever have since. We actually can't even have as many students again until we do other stuff. Like when you drive through West Liberty, they're putting up like a dorm a day or something.
Brand new buildings. I mean, there's apartments.
And that of course is very troubling to me.
Well, and you brought up Campbell Hall. That's something that we can point out in this second part here. Now that we're into the point where you've now come back to Bethany in your second tour. You brought up Campbell Hall, which to most people from my group would be B&G, right? That's the B&G building. Mm-hmm. Cochrane was just, when I got here in 2010, it had just been, the renovation project had just been finalized. I know Phillips has gone, they put the sign for, help me out with her name. They put the sign on Miss Nick. They put the sign on, I mean, there's different things that have changed, but what's the biggest difference you can say from the campus when you got here your first time and what it is now or what it was when you came back?
When I was a student, women were not allowed into the men's dormitories and vice versa. Women had a curfew They had to be in their rooms. There was a different curfew on school nights than weekends. They had to sign in and out. Men had a little different situation. We lived more independently. Alcohol was forbidden in anybody's room whatsoever. We did have one bar, Emily's, M's, which was down the road there. And frequently, many of us, some of us, would either walk or run with shoes and naked because we were pledging to M's. Because in those days,
there was a lot of different
there was
rules.
A lot of hazing
Different
going on.
rules, different.
That was a very long night, let me just tell you, and cold.
Well, when you're talking about Emily's, there's also, so you were here for the wooden.
Well, we can call it, it was page 1, and then it was page 2, and then it was Wooden Keg. I think that's what we're talking about. Frank Calabrese.
Yes, Frank Calabrese.
So I was there. We came there, no bar in town. That one was out there. No alcohol on campus and whatever. And then Frank Calabrese, a perpetual student here, opened up what was the post office and the bookstore, and turned into an in-town bar. And then his wife, they were getting divorced, opened a second bar.
And there's a mysterious.
Yeah, we don't know how
something
that went
happened.
down. We don't
something
know.
happened.
Yeah, something happened.
and then Bubba came into town. That was,
No, Bubba was here first. Anyway, and they were together first. But anyway, so we went. So we were at a turning point here where things were really. Here's what I believe, Carla mostly. I was here at the best of times. In the best of times, I was here for. And by the way, one of the reasons I did not go to Woodstock is because my fraternity was going national in California. And my roommate who invited me to come to Woodstock with him, I had to turn Ed down saying, I've got other obligations. And to make it worse, my best friend from high school decided he was going to be getting married that same time weekend, and I was going to be best man in his wedding. So I had to not go to California to become with the Nationals, not go to Woodstock. I guess what matters is, so Ed never made it to Woodstock. Ed was one of those guys stuck in a car like miles away from the fence and whatever.
It's still a hell of a story.
But it's
you were there.
Some people frequently tell me this shit cannot possibly. Can I say shit?
You can say whatever.
I already
you want.
said it.
Yeah. It ain't coming back.
Oh, that's true. Or maybe I will, depending on the demand.
No, you're coming back, but I don't think the word's coming back.
Oh, okay, all right. Anyway, first of all, and I don't know if we want to if you want to stop me or whatever. I'm the luckiest person I know. And not that every day is wonderful, and I've got my pains and problems and all sorts of complexities. I don't know anybody else that's really wanted to do what I've gotten to do. I wanted to teach at Bethany. When I was a junior, I told my roommate, one of my little brother's roommate, I want to come back. I want to teach at Bethany. What? You really are sure? I'm totally sure. Well, so after Bethany. And I had a girlfriend here, and I was really, I thought, in love, and I was then. And so, not to move too far away, I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and I was there, and I was studying, graphic design, commercial art and stuff, but I wasn't doing like the fine art stuff, and I was okay with that. But then at some point I decided, no, I want to go to grad school, and then I went to Morgantown to get a master's, and to get a master's. To get a graduate degree in visual art is something, is really complicated, because at Bethany, and one of the reasons I try to nurture my students to say, you're worthy, your stuff is worthy, your work is worth making. The opposite is true and it's still true to this day in grad school for visual art. And that is that all too many of these MFA people are trying to shred you, to tear you down and tear you apart. Well, I'd gone from my mentor, Wes Wagner, who I met, and I didn't get to that part of the story. Why I changed my major was I took an art class, and this man, I knew the day I had my first lecture from him in art fundamentals. Here's my mentor.
This is on me.
Here he is, and he and I were this close until his death, and I was selected to give the eulogy at his funeral, and his widow recently died. She a lifelong friend. And, that's the Bethany story that I think, and if you look at the tree by the Visual Arts Center, the stone there for Wes Wagner, he was an extraordinary man, an exceptional teacher, and I was just lucky enough to have him as mine. And if I could ever live up to to that thing, that would be all I'd ever want to be.
Well, and I don't want to speak for anybody else. I can tell you what you did for me in art, other than put up with me not showing up to 9 a.m. but showing up to 1 p.m. for
It
painting.
was so early.
The 9 a.m. thing was, we talked about it the first day of class. I was like, Ken, this is a little early, don't you think?
I knew it was early, and I had to get here from Wheeling.
Yeah, well.
I suffered. I wanted you to suffer.
Well, then painting was great.
I know, because it was in the late afternoon.
And I improved, and I might have been late to class, but I always stayed, and I got, I remember you have to do a self-portrait, but it's interpretive. It's not
Subjective color.
yeah.
No flesh tones.
So
No browns.
I remember
No
doing,
pinks.
putting my picture on the, I got a square head and it's red, and you asked me why is my face red? Well, because I yell a lot. It's normally the color I give you. We're gonna give you a B+ in painting for that.
You remember that?
I got a B+. I got a B+. Trust me, there was few and far between for a couple years there that I had those type of grades. So
Happy to provide. And by the way,
you were always somebody you could come. Yeah, I've talked. I interrupted. I don't know how many classes of yours that I just walk in. Hi, Ken.
I'm there for you. By the way, I've never given anybody a grade. I want to say that. I'll take that back in a slight bit. I have given grades that a student has earned, and except for this, every once in a while there'll be a D-, and a D- from Kenn Morgan is a John Taylor, Mr. Taylor, chubby, Mr. Taylor F, and a D- means I never want to see you again. I am not going to give you this class again. I am done with you. And so you're not going to have to take it over to purge that grade from your transcript.
Well, I got a C in art fundamentals, so I was in either category.
Well, see that class is different because there are points to be made that are not just subjective. One of the complicated things about being an art professor is the subjectivity and the potential of being challenged on the subjectivity. So that's why I think trust in the professor and trust that this professor is giving me a fair evaluation matters the most to me.
So when we come to that point, instead of asking the normal question of why Bethany, because I think you've given many points of why Bethany, I'm going to let you, I think there's a story. There's another one of these folklores that needs to be cleared.
It does need to be cleared.
It has to do, for those of you at home, it has to do with a clock tower that's pretty famous if you've been to Bethany.
Okay.
Well, Mickey Mouse ears.
Here's what's really crazy. All right, so can you take this over there?
Yeah, I'll walk it over. Okay. This right there? This picture there?
Well, that would be me.
That's Kenn Morgan.
You didn't know that? All right, so go over there.
All right, so this is a young Kenn Morgan right here. That's a young Kenn.
Oh, and by the way, didn't I just see this? These are the Sigma News I wouldn't have been really all that compatible with until, recently. I can't believe how many of these guys have asked me to be their friend. I'm thinking, you bullied me when I was a student here. You threw mashed potatoes at me. I was a server in the dining hall. We'll talk about that. We had,
we'll have to bring you back. There's stories we have.
Uniforms, starch uniforms, and waiters and waitresses. It was a classy place. All right, so let me put this to rest. It'll never be at rest because there are people who'll never believe this. A long time ago, in 1970, it was not second semester, it was first. In 1970, I was called to the Dean of Students office up in Cramblett Hall because I was president of SAE at the time. Well, that I thought was because. So I'm thinking, like, what is this, urgent or whatever? Yes, you need to get up here right away. Not to go to class, not to do anything, not to take a shower, just get up here. And I'm thinking, this sounds really, I wonder what somebody's done. I don't even know. So I only saw a couple of guys because it's like early in the morning. Is something going on? Has somebody done something screwed up around here? And I didn't get any information. So I go up there and I go into Bob Sandercox's office, and John Cunningham was there. And I'm saying, so, well, very funny. This, of course, is just my memory, so it could be not their memories. Bob's gone. JC's still here. What's going on here? Well, we'd like to ask you that. And I said, but seriously, I really don't know. Like, oh, sure, you don't know. They were like not believing that I didn't know what they were talking about. As it turned out, and it was revealed, well, we suppose you don't know that someone broke into the tower last night and went up to the clock and put a Mickey Mouse face on the clock of Old Main. I'm going, you've got to be kidding me.
And it's easy to frame Ken Morgan for a...
I'm thinking like, first of all, I'm thinking like, why didn't I think of that? But secondly, like, I wouldn't have had the nerve to do that. I mean, I'm thinking like, that's really up there. And at night? Anyway, so it was a big deal. Got to get to the bottom of this, and no one would believe, and some still don't, that I didn't do this. But here's what I want to say. This feat, this trick, this whatever, was the best thing I've never done. And
it's the beginning of the Ken Morgan legend.
If I had only been crazy enough to do this, so you can walk this over there.
I will go and show.
And when I think about this. You go up there. I've been up there many times, and of course, I can't go up there anytime without thinking like, of this particular incident. I couldn't have imagined doing such a thing. And surviving it. How many people were involved in this? Now, I'm teaching here. This is the end of this story. I'm teaching here, and one of my he was an art major. One of my first art majors said to me, not the first or second or third day class probably, but he said, Kenn, I need to share a secret with you. I go, what is it? And he goes, well, I'm pretty sure you got blamed for something that my mother did. And I go, oh, you're kidding me. He goes, yeah. My mom and a couple of her friends put the Mickey Mouse on the clock tower. I go, you are kidding me.
And from that point on, it was you knew the people that did it?
I knew his mother. And by the way, and I'm not giving anything away, so people out there may be listening to this, what's really crazy about this, her initials are the same as mine.
And you know what, Ken? That is a perfect place to stop. I'm going to tell you right now, maybe we'll get you back here in the spring and we'll do it more close to your area, your neck of the woods.
Your choice.
Thank you for being on. Give you an elbow.
Oh, thank you.
Give you an elbow, and I'll give you one.
Cheers, guys.
We're going to send it off to Harry Chambers. He's going to tell you everything about his store, the breakfast sandwiches, the biscuits and gravy, dollar sandwiches, the weekly specials, Fish Friday, and they have T-shirts. 2 T-shirts going out right now. They have the Shroom Capital of the World shirts. So I believe the second run of these shirts. And the Chambers General Store shirt. If they don't have it, you don't need it. But without further ado, look at Ken.
Art Club president.
Look at that guy. Without further ado, Harry Chambers, take it away.
You've just watched another exciting episode of Dingo Talk with your host, Carlo Guadagnino, recorded live in his secret lair in Bethany, West Virginia. Sponsored by Chambers General Store, the longest running general store in the state of West Virginia. Stop by and see us. We're here Monday through Friday, 6A to 5P, and on Saturday, 6A to noon. Get a breakfast sandwich or our new sausage, biscuits, and gravy. Coming soon, another round of Bethany, Mushroom Capital of the World t-shirts, and new Chambers General Store. If we don't have it, you don't need it t-shirts.